Welcome to the Veterans Impact Show, where our commitment is to help, hope, and healing of our veteran family and our nation. I'm Jim Blythe, a U.S. Navy veteran and a certified senior advisor. Join us as we continue the mission of leadership and commitment to our communities and our great country. Why, you never know where we're going to go or who you're going to meet. We invite you to join in, plug in, and share in what we do. This is your Veterans Impact Show.
Welcome aboard. I'm Jim Blythe, U.S. Navy veteran, and I've got a really, really great program today. I must tell you, though, Cedric is home nursing a bad back. We miss him. He'll be here probably in the next week or so. So I got to tell you, this is special. I was walking through a hallway at an event, and I saw this really sharply looking, dressed gentleman, and I looked on his lapel, and there was something that, without a doubt, stopped me dead in my tracks. And I said, "Are you a Navy SEAL?" And he goes, "Yes, I am." And so I want to have Mark Liebman, who is a frequent contributor to our program, a very close friend, author, speaker, teacher, helicopter pilot, SAR rescue pilot. Mark, please introduce Captain Gary Rosholt.
Yeah, so it's my honor to introduce Admiral Rosholt, who is a Navy SEAL. He was, at the peak of his Navy career, the Deputy Commander of Special Operations Command and spent 35 years in the SEAL teams and had a wonderful career. And then after that, he wound up in the Middle East doing all kinds of interesting things for a defense contractor. So Gary is here, or Admiral Rosholt is here, because we've invited him to speak at the National Defense Briefing Series to talk about part of our series on Great Power Competition Special Operations. And he's going to talk about how our special forces are organized, how we operate, how some of our allies do, as well as some of our potential adversaries. So today we're going to talk about some of those topics that you'll hear more in detail when we have the event on January 25th, 2026. At Heritage Ranch. You can register on the National Defense Briefing Series website. It's up and ready. It's $50. Not only gets you attendance, but a chance to ask Admiral Rosholt questions, and also a good dinner.
Yeah, it was a great dinner. I got to tell you, though, I'm interested in knowing, because you went straight from college into BUDS training, into the SEAL training. That's very unusual, isn't it?
It is pretty rare. I mean, most of the time you get a lot that have to go into the fleet, during the warfare specials, but also now they're actually recruiting as well to try and get both officers enlisted into the BUDS pipeline.
Oh, well, I used to go up and down the Silver Strand and watch you guys being busted apart on the Silver Strand. So tell us a little bit about why you joined the SEALs. What motivated you to take really that extreme warfare?
I think, first of all, as so many of our active duty military and our veterans out there, it's in your bloodlines. My father was a 30-year career Air Force colonel, so moving around the world. I was born in Germany when he was stationed there. As many, we spent 3 years packed up and moved around the world. So, but we ended up in Hawaii, and where I went to high school. So going to high school at the Radford High School there, we just celebrated our 50th reunion. Shorts and bare feet are great. I also fell in love with the ocean. So that's when I kind of saw living at the Hickam Air Force Base and watching the ships come and go from the inlets to Pearl Harbor. That's when I came to my mind that the Navy is where I wanted to be. So that's when I applied and got my Navy ROTC scholarship at the University of Illinois. And then on my midshipman cruise, when I first got introduced to the UDT Frogmen, now all SEALs in the Philippines, we're on a port call in the Subic Bay there. And all of a sudden, 4th of July demo, and there's all these SEALs out on Grandy Island doing the demonstrations for all for the families and the sailors in town. This is blowing things up and shooting things. We got actually tour as well. So that's what I want to do. So after that introduction on my midshipman third class cruise, later on I would do a airborne training as a midshipman. I would do air assault training as a midshipman. So when it came to get selected for go to BUDS training, I got my dream job, and I was selected to go to BUDS Class 106 in 1979.
Wow, 1979.
Wait a second. I was commissioned in 68, so don't go out.
Well, I know how old you are because you were flying helicopters off of Meyer Riskany way back then. Matter of fact, he wrote a book, Admiral Rosholt, and I wanted to read the book, and so I read it. The Cherubs 3?
Cherubs 2.
Cherubs 2?
Don't get us too high in altitude.
Okay. So it's all about what they're doing. And I called him up, true story. I called him up and I said, Mark, that wasn't fiction. I was there on the O-boat. And you guys were doing this sort of stuff? Are you kidding me? And you said, well, we had to change some of the names to keep from getting sued. And we had to get it through the Navy.
Yeah, I had to get it through the Navy for those support. By the way, Admiral Rosholt, so your background, because I'm a son of an Air Force brat as well, or I'm an Air Force brat. And so I grew up in central Germany. So afterwards, we're going to have to compare notes because it'd be interesting to see because I have children, as do you, who have followed in our footsteps. And I now have grandchildren who are following in our footsteps.
Well, it becomes a company business, doesn't it?
It is.
Family business.
Yeah. And so I think that's exciting. And you got to spend quite a bit of time also in the Middle East.
Yes, actually, when I first joined Graduation Buds, I was not just a SEAL, but I went to UDT 12 first. So I was also a UDT Frogman. And also that kind of heritage. They've all been decommissioned now and all recommissioned as SDV teams and SEAL teams. But it's kind of nice to have that heritage as a UDT Navy Frogman in my lineage as well, as part of a Navy SEAL where I spent, again, the bulk of my career.
Well, that's where they got started, was from the UDT.
And Jim, as you mentioned, again, Middle East was my final tours. And I'm spending my final, 20 years there pretty much. And my last two flag careers were in the Middle East. I was the deputy commander at Special Operations Command for Central Command, and not the SOCOM variant, but the CENTCOM soft component with the headquarters there in the rear in Tampa, Florida, and then the forward based in Doha, out at Al Udeid Air Base. Then after that one-star job, my second star job, having been nominated by both Admiral Olson and General Mattis, I got the dream job of becoming a warrior diplomat. I was a senior defense official, defense attaché for the U.S. Embassy in Abu Dhabi. So I spent 3 years there in the Middle East, doing that warrior diplomat part of our amazing career opportunities.
Oh, I can only imagine how great that would have been. I've only known one other admiral who got one of those assignments, and he was in London, and he talked about how great it was, and he became real close friends with his Russian counterpart. They played chess together all the time, and he said the conversations were always a little bit tense, a little bit interesting. But this is so important because I think today our special forces, and of course I'm Navy, but I look at the SEALs as the pinnacle of our special forces because they do it all. And one of the things is our special forces are a huge deterrent to other nations who want to attack us and mess with us. I mean, they saw what we did to Osama bin Laden. They've seen what we've done in other things. So this is a tremendous tradition you're carrying on. It's relatively new. Started in 63, 64 maybe, or 65. I don't remember.
I know Kennedy commissioned the SEAL teams during Vietnam. UDT were operating there in advance of that one. We were clearing the beaches for World War II. But yes, it's been an amazing career. And I think the Navy SEALs, again, we're part of the larger Joint Force of Special Operations, led by SOCOM. But as the Special Operations component for the U.S. Navy, it's a pretty powerful force that we have. And one thing I've always said is never forget the naval part of special warfare. Because again, our contributions to the fleet brings a unique capability as well beyond the Joint Force that is the primary formation these days.
Yeah, and you've been through airborne training. I was talking to an Air Force bird colonel who was at that time over the air combat controllers. And I said, what did you do for fun recently? And he said, I went to the SEALs in Coronado and I went out on a deal with them and I did a halo jump from 41,000 feet. Really? He said, yeah, and it was neat because it was at night and we could see San Diego. And I'm going, you jumped into the Pacific Ocean. Yeah, he said probably 3 or 4 miles out. And I'm like, halo jump from 41,000 feet? That's crazy.
And normally with equipment, and normally at nighttime.
Yeah.
And landing in cold water.
Oh, yeah.
So this is not Hollywood jumps.
Yeah.
Just for fun.
Admiral, do you guys realize that that is the hunting ground of the great white shark? They love to eat the harbor seals.
Seals are meaner than sharks are.
I'm just sitting here thinking, why would anybody leave a perfectly safe airplane and leap out of it into the cold, black night and then land in 50-degree water? Because as a helo pilot doing rescue missions, pilots that go into the water after punching out of an airplane in 50-degree water, you got only a few minutes to get them out before they've got exposure issues.
Oh, yeah.
Well, the good news is that seals, we get custom measured wetsuits, and they're multi-layered depending on the temperature you're going into. You've got dry suits for the extreme temperatures. But also when you land in the water, it's a much easier landing than landing on ground.
I can
Also,
imagine.
I prefer water jumps myself. And generally when you land in water, there's probably a submarine to pick you up to keep on going.
One of the other things that I was amazed about,
Assuming
because
you
I've
find
known a number of Navy enlisted men that tried to get into the SEALs, and they were football players. They were great. They were tremendous athletes. They could do all of the physical things, but they couldn't pass the academics. They couldn't do that. So it takes a lot academically, a lot of smarts to be a Navy SEAL. You guys don't let just good athletes come in if they're good old boys. You get the cream of the cream. You get the best.
I think we do. Again, everyone wants to be the best. I mean, and the SEALs want to get out there and get the best of them. Finding those athletes. I think we've done some studies, and you find that water polo players and wrestlers tend to be the highest of all the sports candidates out there, the best to kind of make it through BUDS training. BUDS is broken down into 3 basic phases. You've got basic conditioning, which is all the physical training, runs, swims, obstacle courses, a lot of mental stresses going on in that one. And the infamous Hell Week, where you're working for 6-7 days straight. Then get into the diving phase. That's where you mentioned some of the dive physics comes in, and the mental piece. Then land warfare, where you're learning charge calculations, weapons, and all the variety of things that you learn. So it's those 3 basic things kind of get to the basic, get through BUDS training.
Pretty amazing. And you really are trained so amazingly to work as a team, to be a team. Probably, and that's, I think, one of the big things about the Navy is how we work together. Wouldn't you agree, Mark?
I would. So I want to ask you another question related to the SEAL community, because we have, if I remember correctly, we have Marine Recon, we have the Air Force Air Commandos, we have the Navy Green Berets, the Army Green Berets, and the Navy SEALs. How do you guys work together, and what level? Because at SOCOM, you're kind of at the top of the pyramid, but down at the bottom at the working level, it's a lot different because you're all trained with different specialties.
Our joint force today is so well integrated. Again, when I was growing up, you were primary, again, 2 Westpac deployments on board the amphibious ships, the LSTs and Tuscaloosa and the LPD Ogden. So I was very service-centric back then, but the force today, you're joint from all your early assignments. We also got a lot of joint schools at the Joint Special Operations University down in Tampa. All the courses are run through that one. You get a lot of cross-breeding, cross-training going between those. So I think both academically and then and training and workups, that joint force is so well integrated today. And not to mention communications. So we are interoperable on the communications, on the tactics. As we've learned from our past lessons, there's been some pretty horrific stories on,
Yes.
I can't talk to you, I'm sorry, even with our own components.
Or I have to find a telephone line, call Tampa, a long distance call, and have them tell somebody else at the other end back in Grenada what to do.
It's amazing. But again, without a doubt, our Navy SEALs, our Navy Special Forces, and maybe it's just my prejudice, but without a doubt, I think they're considered the pinnacle of that. And yet they integrate well with the Air Force, the Marines, et cetera. Now, isn't there within the Green Berets, isn't there a special one called Delta Force that's maybe their pinnacle?
Oh yes, sir. That's the the pinnacle for the Tier 1 force within the Army, or then and for SOF, and for the Navy it's Dev Group, Naval Special Warfare Development Group, SEAL Team 6. So again, each of these tiers have got their Tier 1 force to go out and get the job done when we need to call them. But even those forces work together.
Yeah. Okay. So we know of SEAL Team 6, and we know of some of the other SEAL teams, and there's fairly small teams to what appears to us. what, 10, 15, 20 men? Participants?
Those platoons, again, the smallest unit you'll have is basically a swim pair. That's why you learn to trust your buddy. And when you're diving in dark waters, going long distances, you and a swim buddy, and you're going to depend your life on each other. But then that kind of grows back because there's much more behind you than that beside you. But that person can get you in, is going to get you out as well.
Yeah.
You talk about the response piece. When our citizens get in trouble out there in public, you call 911. Our nation gets in trouble, you call area code 912 because that's the area code for Fort Bragg and home of JSOC. So,
well, that's a good thing to know because I think there are times when we'd all say, "I think we're in trouble." Well, we're getting there.
And chances are our soft forces will probably already be there.
Oh man! But all of your operations are outside of the United States. Is that correct?
That's correct. Sometimes we'll do military support to civil authorities.
Okay.
One of my interesting tours, I was the DoD Illinois to FEMA for both 9/11 through Katrina. So sometimes when we exceed the capacity of the local, state, and federal government, the military will come and help. So that's where we have military forces, obviously the National Guard, supporting the national response to that disaster zone. So we have routinely supported the disasters within the domestic United States.
Yeah, that's how they get access to the helicopter community or bring ships in offshore to do stuff. It's through FEMA and the liaison billets that are in each FEMA it's region, if I remember correctly.
Yep. It just highlights the interagency working of our special operations forces, not just with the three-layer agencies, but also those that they need help here in the U.S.
Yeah. By the way, Jim, there's a FEMA bunker in Denton.
Oh yeah.
Off. I don't want to use the road, but it's there. The first time I do, pardon me?
288.
Yeah, off 280. I wasn't going to give the address.
Anybody knows it. It's up there. Yeah. The other thing is that Denton Airport, they extended the runways to be able to take a fully loaded 747 in and out of that. And that's that and Love Field and DFW, the only airports that can do that. All right, we're going to take a break. And in a minute, we'll be right back to talking with Admiral Gary Rosholt. This is kind of exciting for me because I've known one or two SEALs, and they live incredible lives. They are the pinnacle of our special forces. They are the deterrent for the bad guys throughout the world because they know they're going to come get them. So we're going to continue this conversation because he is going to talk also about integrating these and then looking at some of our enemies and what they have in terms of special forces and how we can handle them. So this is Jim Blythe, and I'll be right back with these words from our sponsors. Thank you.
Welcome back, and thanks to our great sponsors, Fairway Independent Mortgage, Healing Thine Hearts Ministry, and Symbios Integrative Health. Now, let's get back to this conversation.
Mark, let's get into what the meat, without revealing it all, of the NDBS program is, which is the integration of these as well as what we're looking at in other countries. I think you have the Republic of Korea, you have the People's Republic of China, the Russians.
Yeah, I want to step back a little bit.
Okay, please.
So earlier this year, we started this thing called Great Power Competition. So we've had speakers talk about it from an air power perspective. We had a sea power perspective just in October. We've had a land warfare one where we brought people in from the Institute for the Study of War, some of their analysts to talk about Russia and Iran, and indirectly the People's Republic of China. And what we do is we bring in people like Admiral Rosholt who have interesting expertise that you don't see in the mainstream media. And we do is we bring them in, they give a presentation, and they take questions from the audience. So the one that we've invited Admiral Rosholt to do is the Great Power Competition Special Operations Perspective. And so it's really the format's pretty much the same in terms of topics. What's happening in the world, where are the threats, what are our capabilities, and how do we deal with how can we deal with our adversaries? So with that, I'd like to ask Admiral Rosholt to talk a little bit about how we're organized and then we can get in the next segment.
Go for it.
Our allies, and then our adversaries.
Sounds good.
You're on, sir.
We threw you in.
As I mentioned, we're all organized under U.S. SOCOM. United States Special Operations Command is unified combat command with service-like responsibilities, which is kind of unique from all those others. We organize, train, and equip special operations forces. And under that headquarters command based out in Tampa, you've got all the service components. You've got the Naval Special Warfare Command. You've got the Joint Special Operations Command. You've got the Army Special Operations Command. Recently added was the Marine Corps Special Operations Command. So each of the services has a special operations component to kind of provide those service forces into this joint soft force.
So that's what they are and how they work. So yeah, go ahead, Mark. I'm sorry.
So into each of those elements, because I did a fair amount of joint foreign exercises. As I remember correctly, in SOCOM, you've got members of foreign allied special forces that are actually integrated, maybe the wrong term, but actually they are filling billets in Tampa as well as elsewhere around the world. And by the same token, we've got our folks, Army, Navy, Air Force, Marine Corps, scattered around the world working with them. So tell us how that works too, because that's a key component to not only the joint force, but integrate how we work with our allies.
Almost certainly. Again, those LNOs and liaison officers are key, I think, to kind of in the power of one. Sometimes it becomes exponential in terms of having that integrate, whether they were CENTCOM down in Tampa or SOCOM down in Tampa. You've got our allied counterparts who will send a long-term assignment there, 1 or 2 or 3 years there. So they kind of get embedded. They're used to working with our forces in their home country, but then to kind of bring their expertise and their force understanding to our force headquarters to help us integrate those forces. When we do foreign deployments, foreign internal defense training with other host nations, we'll basically work with the counter services. So if it's a land-based force, the Army Special Operations Command, the Green Beret will probably get that training. If it's maritime-based force, then the Navy SEALs will get that kind of training. If it's an Air Force unit, so each component will kind of train with their host nation force on that tactical level, and then the component commander will then bring all that operational levels and strategic levels back up on the joint force side. So, and equally from the SOCOM side, that's what we're taking in LNOs. We're also sending out LNOs. So I talked about the interagency and the number of special operations LNOs based in Washington, D.C. and around the interagency is pretty impressive. So I always have a phone call where you kind of pick up somebody that knows your language, has got the contacts and relationships within that headquarters. And that's the thing, I think, in special operations, as all militaries, it's those personal relationships that will make a difference in those partnerships.
So let's say domestically here for a second. So when you pick up the phone and it's a counterterrorism situation, so you're calling a liaison officer at FBI, at CIA, where then what happens?
Well, they also have their LNO based at SOCOM.
Right.
So depending who the supporting commander was, that will depend on the role of it. But normally SOCOM is a supporting commander. So those combat commanders, the CENTCOMs, the Indo-PACOMs, those are the lead, have the lead. But for SOCOM, and that would primarily lead to JSOC. So they would just make sure that they're getting the forces, provide back briefs on the information going out. So it's a good networking piece.
So if in fact we've got a situation where we're going to do I'll use the word direct action, where bullets are going to fly or could fly, and how often do we wind up having, just picking as Brits or Aussies, integrated with a team that's going to go do it? I presume that's mission specific and territory or geographic specific, or is it if it's a U.S. led thing, it's only U.S. personnel and there's nobody else?
Sometimes those depend on national sovereignty issues and national issues. Again, if it's a UK or whatever that host country or that supporting country would be interested in, if it's one of their national security interests, they would probably join us. But sometimes those align, which more than often, sometimes they don't. So we'll have unilateral operations, which I think probably with the minority these days, we're doing unilateral U.S. operations only. We do prefer to work in that joint combined force where you're working with other partners, especially if you're in a region where you need their expertise. They worked in their past, they've grown up in the past, they know the region. That's the most powerful force, as we've seen in Siege of Sodus over 2 decades in Afghanistan and Iraq.
Where are some of the forces that you guys work with that are foreign? Like, I can imagine you work with the British Royal Marines because they have a special forces within that. We're going to have to take a break in just a second, but I want to continue this conversation. We're talking with Admiral Gary Rosholt, and this is amazing because he is talking about special forces, not just as a SEAL, but of all of them within the United States. And they, as I have said before, are a deterrent to our not so friendly people in the world who would like to take us out, because when they think about we can come get you, we can come get you. So this is important. And again, Mark's going to give you information about the National Defense Briefing Series. And we're also want you to stick around and share this program, be a part of Veterans Impact Show, because we're here for you. We're here to help you also understand what goes on with veterans, but goes on with our active duty military and how we interact around the world. We'll be right back.
Welcome back, and thanks to our great sponsors, Fairway Independent Mortgage, Healing Thine Heart's Ministry, and Symbios Integrative Health. Now, let's get back to this conversation.
I want to say a special thank you to DBTV Network for putting us on around the world, and AUN out in California. They do a great job for us. Excuse me. Weather came through and my sinuses are getting me. I got to tell you, also, I thank Symbios Integrative Health for all they do to save veterans' lives. If you want to know more about that, just go to symbioseccn.com. Finally, Fairway Independent Mortgage, you can look us up. We're nationwide. I work for them, and my NMLS number is 311548. We're here always, whether it's Symbios, Fairway, whatever, to help you as a veteran to be able to navigate wherever you need to go. So give us a call, veteransimpactshow.com. We're here for you. Now, where were we going, Mark?
Okay, so I want to talk more about the joint foreign combined, if I remember correctly, that's the correct term. So in my career, I worked with a lot of allied nations. And whenever we would go someplace to do an exercise, the foreign nation or the allied nation would bring a certain, not only territorial expertise or geographic expertise and cultural expertise, which is probably, if nothing else, the most important, but they also had special strengths that we didn't have outside that. So, Admiral, in your experience, if we were talking about, let's say, the Aussies or the Brits or the Japanese or some of our allies, what are some of the unique strengths that they bring that we typically don't have in our bag of tricks?
I'd say those international partners, again, it's always about partnership, and the stronger you build those, the better it is for all of us. I think first you'll look at the strengths of our Five Eyes nations. You mentioned those right away. So if you can kind of share intel.
Well, I'll say, everybody needs to know who the Five Eyes are. It's UK, Canada, Australia, New Zealand, and I'm leaving somebody else. And US. Of course, us.
So if you can share intel, that's a key and a challenge in a lot of things if you're not on it. So I think the Five Eyes relationship brings an automatic strength in building that partner force if you're doing operations together. Next, obviously, NATO. Because NATO has been together for a long time. We've got common interests with NATO forces. And then having their own methods of sharing security information is a second kind of force I can in terms of ease of integration. Then start to get into where your national security interests are, and that's where you start talking about, great power competition. When you kind of see those nations that, they're kind of realizing that, hey, this is it's getting serious in my neighborhood. That I need to make sure I've got plenty of partners on my side. I need to make sure that my weapons and my communications are interoperable. So you start to see the U.S. weapon systems, the best in the world, but trying to integrate those across again, even our allied systems gets challenging. So those kind of things, the more you work together and train and practice together, the more you can overcome those things before you have to go to combat to fight and win.
Mark, you've said it, and Colonel Richard Canis has said it. Warfare is changing. Warfare is changing dramatically from what it was 10 years ago, 15 years ago now. And our special forces are an integral part of that change today. Yeah.
I would say warfare is not changing. Warfare is all about killing the other bad guy and taking his territory, or achieving some military objective. What is changing is how you do it.
Okay, well said.
And the technology available.
And technology, well, how you do it drives the technology. The technology drives how you do it. And then also, so when I started in being a staff officer, we would talk about kill chains, being able to find a target, put a bomb on a target. We were talking 30, 40 minutes. In Desert Storm, we were down in the 5 and 6 minute range with the kill boxes. And my son, who was flying in Afghanistan in F-18s, we're talking about seconds. Basically lays data link to the F-18. F-18 is then the avionics drive it to the optimal launch point. Weapon comes off the airplane. We're talking seconds. So those kinds of things change. Drones change things. But the primary way, well, the primary key has not changed, and that's leadership. Because at the end of the day, it's men and women fighting and who are properly led. But, okay, from a special warfare perspective, how is the technology changing the way you go about your business?
SOF likes to be the tip of the spear, not just going into any sort of conflict, but also making sure that technology is there that we can take advantage of, and trying to get ahead of the traditional acquisition process. Congress gave us service like also acquisition authority, where all SOCOM can go out and buy things. Now you still have, for those larger systems, like the Air Force, the C-130s, a gun for the MC-130s, the United States Air Force still buys a basic platform, but SOCOM will fund the SOF unique technologies that go inside that, then refresh those as necessary. We're also fortunate to have that, those contracting authorities to have, J&As for sole source contracting and rapid and urgent compelling requirements. It's nice to get that technology in the hand of the operator to evaluate it first before you kind of spread it across the formation, the SOF formation. A lot of things that we field in SOF will eventually make it over the fence to the rest of the service components. So it's kind of nice to see that tip of spear work in the technology and acquisition as well. And as you mentioned, unmanned systems, artificial intelligence, cyber, and space, I think, are all frontiers that I think we are actively working to make sure that we maintain that technology lead and superiority.
Yeah, we've got to. Well, we've talked about ours and our partners' capability. What about some of our adversaries? Mark, I think when you gave me some notes, one of them you mentioned was the People's Republic of China. One of them you mentioned was Republic of North Korea.
Democratic People's Republic. Yeah, the three that I'd like Admiral Rosholt to talk about in the next segment is Russia, because the Spetsnaz gets a lot of play. I don't know how good, bad, or indifferent they are. I remember
let's go ahead, because we're in the third segment now.
Okay. Sorry.
And no, that's why I'm the leader. Just remember what you told me and what Woody Beale said when they asked me. They said, who leads the military? Who leads the Navy? I said,
E9s.
the chief petty officers.
Yes, the E8s, E9s from
Yeah.
the Navy. They train us, and if they do a good job, we succeed. If we don't take the training, we screw up and never get promoted.
Okay, our adversaries. Let's take, for instance, North Korea, because we also are very allied with South Korea. I do remember guys telling me stories about the ROK troops, the Republic of Korea troops that were embedded with our troops in Vietnam, being very, very, very tough and scary guys. So what about those two?
Well, again, a little backing up, because obviously everyone kind of learned about special operations in the past 2 decades in the Middle East. Counterterrorism has always been a mission for us. It was a highlight for our missions back in the desert, and it will continue to be a primary mission for special operations. Crisis response, we need to call that 911 number. SOF will get that number, so that will always be a legacy mission. But integrated deterrence, that's what I think you're leading to in terms of that great powers competition. When you look at who those great powers are, I'm kind of glad you brought up North Korea as kind of that lead off. As a young frogman, being the Westpac, I was an old team spirit guy. Cold water and GP medium tents, and so close to that DMZ that want to make sure that your navigation brought you into the South Korean beach for the rehearsal for the exercise, and not on the North Korean side, because both of those forces play for real, and they play for real every day, every minute, and all the time. So I think that's a growing threat. You see their weapons capabilities grow. You see the linkages that they have now further with Russia and getting technology transfer because they've now provided troops to support their campaign in Ukraine. So I think that strengthening of that relationship between those two is concerning for all of us. So I think that's one that will be a force to keep our eyes on very closely, as all do their neighbors in the region are recognizing that's a power that continues to grow.
Okay, how about People's Republic of China?
That's the number one force. That's the number one security threat I think our nation has. Again, and what is our national security interest is SOCOM's national security interests. Again, we're not going to take that on directly, but SOF's indirect role, again, because even when we had, hundreds of forces in Iraq and Afghanistan, we still had troops working in Ukraine with their counterparts. We had troops in the Philippines working with our counterparts. We had troops around the world. I think right now there's like 8,000 special operations forces in more than 70 countries. So we have that presence all around. You hear about the Chinese Belt and Road. Well, we are there to kind of put little bumps in the road and make them know that we're here.
Little holes in the pipeline.
And to kind of say, hey, be careful where you move because we're here already type of stuff. Making sure that we're building our partnerships first between the U.S. and that partner nation as opposed to them going to China first. So that's a thing that we kind of work both, and that's a full power of the U.S. government, not just the military. But SOF is out there on the ground with those partner forces, making those inroads daily. So when the bigger force needs come in, well, you got that leader ready, and we're there to do that.
Are we doing a lot of work with Vietnam and or the Philippines as well? Because the South China Seas are hugely contentious problem.
Oh, most certainly. Again, I think you've seen the work in the Philippines. Again, with all the new islands being built by the Chinese right there, the U.S. Navy runs through those routinely. And we continue to work with their special operations forces on some of the counterterrorism missions that we work together collaboratively on down there in the Philippines.
So we have nations with whom we do not have formal alliances, but we have a strong relationship. I'll get to the one I want to mention here in a second. We have I would want to bet we have a dozen of those, half dozen to a dozen of those. So a country like Israel, which has a pretty capable special operations group of folks. How do we work with them as opposed to somebody like a member NATO nation or a country where we have, like Japan, where we have a formal defense treaty?
Well, I think the strength of the U.S.-Israeli relationship has been evident, the past 2 years, and I think that is notwithstanding, SOF and their SOF forces have been working together a long time. Again, we trade a lot of technology that is always tip of the spear. We've been doing that foreign weapons evaluation programs. There's always some Israeli technology that kind of comes in. They work together on the forces in exercise and trainings, but also in operations. And also, I think that's an easy strength to have. And then when you see the larger force come in, when you're doing ballistic missile defense, you're doing ops on inside Iran, based upon what they've done to kind of suppress some of the air defenses. I think that certainly enabled us. Obviously, our concerns on their asymmetric forces throughout the Middle East, it's been severely degraded. So again, they've got the capability.
The Israeli or the
Israeli degradation of the Iranian asymmetric defense, whether it's Hamas, Hezbollah, or the Houthis. Yeah. So to have the capability that they have and have the political will project that power is impressive. So I think that we've certainly seen a different landscape in the Middle East that I think is good for all of us. I just hope that, again, the Gaza peace continues to hold and we find a solution for that one. Because I think the work that they've done, both calming down Yemen with the Houthis there, and even Lebanon is going down. But also to Syria, see that come back into the regional and the global norms is impressive.
So I want to pick on. There's a war going on in Ukraine, and the Russians used to have, at least back when I was still in an oppressive special operations force called Spetsnaz. Yet we have yet to see them do anything in Ukraine that we know of. Do you have any idea why? Or and that's a loaded question. You can tell me to go piss up a rope.
I would tend to say that they're probably large presence. Again, not true in all the recent history, but the little green men that went into Crimea.
Yeah, that was
probably a lot of soft and unconventional warfare aspects to do that one. And you notice it didn't make the news. It didn't have, but when tanks come across border, that brings the whole world, into the fight. When the little green men come across the border, I think that's the power of unconventional and special operations warfare, and sometimes the intelligence forces. But that one kind of got done quietly and quickly, and still remains there. Granted, there's a lot of back and forth on that one. But I think that was probably one of the earlier, Russian, or their Spetsnaz or with their other unique forces that probably were leading that piece in there.
I think a lot of intelligence work was done to set that up to where little green men could walk across the border.
Yes, sir.
Obviously, you didn't have that in Ukraine because the tanks came across the border, but from what I understand, they ran out of gas. So, literally.
So, as a SEAL, without giving away stuff that would get us both in trouble, what kind of oddball missions that come out of the blue to get tossed into the Special Operations Force thing? Because I've done some weird things as a helicopter pilot, like lift horses out of mudslides, and these things that you don't train for. Just somebody calls you on the phone, can you do this? And then you go think about it for a few seconds or minutes, and you go, yeah, I think we can figure this out.
I had a unique experience like that one. I think during the earlier tanker wars, back in late '89, I believe.
Yep.
We were called the Special Operations Force. We were called. We're not joint at the time, but I was on barge Hercules because we were there to protect the shipping as the oil tankers went through to the Arabian Gulf. So we took a oil drilling barge. We put on our Navy Special Warfare patrol boats. We had Army helicopters. We had Marine Stinger gunners. We had intelligence assets. So we kind of had this floating barge, and we would move around stationary and set up different choke points. So you're not a stationary target. You could pick up and move. And we can sometimes, you saw the Ranajar, sometimes you confront them and you get some good intel things. The Bog Hammer, where you found the Stinger missiles, and that sourced through the Afghanistan pipeline. So it's an interesting thing. That was, I think, an interesting non-traditional force structure. But now they're called mobile sea bases. Granted,
big ships.
But working and deploying and living on an oil barge for 3 months at a time, back and forth, was an interesting experience.
Oh, so that was during Praying Mantis?
Yes, sir.
Okay, question that I have then. With Taiwan, with our relationship with Taiwan, as well as the crazy relationship with China, we're one of their biggest trading partners, but we're also probably one of their biggest adversaries, which is nuts. What would happen, in your opinion, if all of a sudden Taiwan is overrun with special forces? Would we be able to go in and help them or save them?
That's a tough one. I think the case for a lower level, like in Crimea, little green men coming across, as opposed to massive task forces coming across the Straits of Taiwan to occupy it. I think there's probably a more likely scenario for that lower level of slope. Again, the Chinese are long-term visionaries. Mm-hmm. It's not a deadline. It's not on any sort of budget cycle. It's not on any sort of election cycle to do things. So they think they're a long-term view of that unification of Taiwan. So whether you start with a couple and you slowly grow that number, but that's more likely, I think, than a force-on-force invasion of Taiwan that obviously we're all prepared for, a worst case.
Well, let's hope we don't find out.
Agreed.
All right. This has been a great conversation. We want you to come back as we finish up in just a minute and talk with Admiral Rosholt. This is important. What is the tip of the spear? It's our Navy SEALs. It's our Army Green Beret. It's our Delta Force, the Force Recon, Marines, the combat controllers for the Air Force. These are the men and women who are really on the front lines every day, 7 days a week. They're the ones, as Admiral Rosholt goes, you don't call 911, you call 912, which is Special Forces Command in where? Tampa, Florida?
Fort Bragg.
Fort Bragg. All right. So I hope we don't have to do that. We'll be right back after these words. Stay with us.
Welcome back, and thanks to our great sponsors, Fairway Independent Mortgage, Healing Thine Heart's Ministry, and Symbios Integrative Health. Now, let's get back to this conversation.
All right, here we are back with our last session. Would you like to put up the NDBI website, Mark, so people can see that?
I'll let Diane do that.
Yeah, as we continue this conversation and bring this boat back into the dock.
Yeah, so if you want to hear Admiral Rosholt talk more about this, please register for the event on January 25th, 2026. It's at Heritage Ranch, which is in McKinney, Texas. It's about a 40-minute drive from Dallas. And it's, like I said, it's a nice venue. And not only we get to hear him talk more about what we're talking about today, but the most interesting part of the event is the questions we get from the audience.
Oh, been amazing.
We also bring in junior ROTC from the high schools and ROTC from local colleges and cadets. And oddly enough, generally, pretty much, I think we've done 19 events so far. I would say in about 15 of them, the best questions come from the kids.
Yeah. Some of those kids are sharp. Yeah. And
So anyway, my point is please register the event. We typically limit it to about 200 seats. You get a decent dinner. There's a bar. And like I said, the best part about it is Admiral Rosholt will talk for 20, 30 minutes. Then we have about 20, 30 minutes of Q&A, and anybody can ask questions.
I think the best part of it, though, is just networking, meeting other veterans who are there. And there's also some business leaders who are there. And I think that's real important that we come together and we work together to help each other out. And this is one of the events that brings a lot of people together. So this is great. Thank you for that. Diane can put that up again for us. In doing all of that, Admiral Rosholt, what do you think is the most dangerous PowerPoint or the most dangerous confrontational point in the world for us right now? Russia's over here with this crazy deal in the Ukraine. The Chinese are getting into South China Sea. North Korea is getting nuclear weapons. What do you think is the number one adversary that we should be looking at right now?
I think China remains that number one adversary. Although I think also, in addition to that, that great powers competition, you also got to remember defend the homeland is a new priority. I think that'll come up in a new policy guidance, and we're seeing that every day here. So I think that's the core missions. But China remains that international threat out there. Thanks for highlighting all that and bringing up this in the conversation.
Well, I got to tell you, I was Southeast Asia. You were, Mark. There's a lot of things that people don't know about Southeast Asia. Vietnam was a breadbasket of Southeast Asia. I think it still is. And it's an industrial might that's coming out now. Also, many people theorized, and I know a little more about that the biggest oil field in the world is in the Mekong Delta. And I think that's one of the reasons the Chinese are looking so hard at controlling the South China Seas. But then one of the big things you have to understand, the sea lanes, Straits of Malacca and all of that, those sea lanes are some of the most traveled in the world.
Yeah, so from the Chinese do not import about 80% of their oil. And of that 80%, about 70% of it comes from Iran right now. They are Iran's largest customer. They buy about 90% of Iranian oil. It all comes by boat, which means it comes across the Indian Ocean, down through the Straits of Malacca, into the South China Sea, and then to a port someplace in the People's Republic of China. That means that oil supply is very, very easy for an adversary nation that has a navy, the United States, to interdict. The mineral wealth of the nations that border the South China Sea is yet to be explored. Okay, but the Chinese suspect there's a bunch there. We suspect there's a bunch there. The Vietnamese and the Filipinos hope there's a bunch there because it would turn them into extremely wealthy nations. But they are also very jealous of their territorial waters particularly. So we have continued to see incidents between the PRC and the Filipinos, the PRC and the Vietnamese, who, by the way, dislike the Chinese. And as much as it surprises me, the United States has invested a lot in the Republic of Vietnam in terms of we have a lot of factories there. A lot of factories have moved from the PRC to Vietnam because the business climate's a lot better, and it's also not as intrusive in terms of they're not trying to steal everything they can find. So I suspect that will in the future be a huge focal point, not only for the U.S., but for some other friendly nations, because the Aussies have an interest there. Obviously the Filipinos and the Vietnamese, the Thais, Singapore, very wealthy nation, very small, but also has the capital to invest in that resource production.
You mentioned oil, but one of the other big things that the Chinese have is fear of food shortage. They have a huge food shortage type problem.
They can't feed their own people.
They can't feed their own people. And so that's where it comes up for them every year. This has been an amazing conversation. And Admiral Rosholt, I just want to thank you so much for being on board with us today. And Mark, thank you for calling and setting that up. It's really great always to work with you on this. I wish Cedric was here. He would really enjoy it. But I think he would be laying on the floor right now with his back so messed up. I talked to him the other night. So again, I just want to say thank you very, very much for being a part of this and helping us to understand what we're faced with militarily in the world today from the standpoint of the tip of the spear, which is our special forces. So if you guys don't mind, I like to close with a prayer. Lord God of the universe, we are so eternally grateful for men like Admiral Gary Rosholt and Mark, who have led the way in the Navy, who have been there, who are continuing to be there, organizing, leading, teaching the next generation. So dear God, thank you for these men, and thank you for women who do the same. Dear God, we thank you also for your hedge of protection around our active duty military, around those who run into the fire instead of away from it. And dear God, we thank you for taking care of our first responders. Dear God, help us to remember we are one nation, and that we as veterans can bring this nation back together, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, dear God, and amen.
Amen.
Welcome. Thank you. We've done it all. Have a great day.
Thank you.